Hello, Tanse Anine. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Daryl Stranger. Manitoba's advocate for children and youth has released Mamangwa Widudagawin, or the Butterfly Project, a comprehensive 67-page report on the life and death of Eishia Hudson, who was fatally shot by Winnipeg police in 2020. Leanne Sanders has more on the report and its recommendations.
Eishia Hudson was 16 when she was shot by Winnipeg police on April 8, 2020, after a chase in a stolen Jeep. It all began with an alleged robbery at a liquor store. At the time, Hudson was the third Indigenous person killed by Winnipeg police in a span of 10 days. Children and youth advocate Sherry Gott makes 4 recommendations in the report that she believes will keep tragedies like Hudson's from happening again. They include developing protocols for police interacting with youth in crisis and creating a youth-involved public safety training strategy.
My hope is that when the police come to the table with us, that they will hear the voices of the youth and provide some solutions with respect to the ongoing relationships or lack of relationships that they have with the police.
Gott notes in the report that while Hudson was never charged with a crime, she had many interactions with police.
Like a butterfly fluttering from one flower to another, Eishia touched upon numerous service areas, but struggled to find support within these systems. Despite this, her spirit radiated compassion and care, leaving a profound impact on those around her.
The report includes the experiences of several youth who said interactions with police often involve violence and lead to distrust. Grand Chief Kathy Merrick of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs said it's important this report not get lost.
A lot of times we do reports and they collect dust without any feedback or participation from whomever.
In 2021, Manitoba's chief medical examiner called for an inquest into the death of Hudson, but so far no date has been set. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Trudeau government introduced Bill C-53 on Wednesday. If passed, it will formally recognize the Métis governments of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. But the legislation is controversial with pushback from some First Nations. In particular, they object to the government's recognition of the Métis Nation of Ontario. APTN's Fraser Needham reports.
Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller says the legislation has been a long time coming.
These are people whose rights have been denied for centuries, and so the very basic trappings of an ability to organize yourself is the ability to have control over your self-government, and this is consistent with Article 4 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
But a number of First Nations in Ontario are questioning the Métis Nation of Ontario's inclusion in Bill C-53. They say the MNO is not a legitimate Section 35 holder of Indigenous rights, and earlier this week the Chiefs of Ontario held a press conference in Ottawa to let their views be known.
We have serious concerns about this legislation and its impact to our collective rights. Mr. Mark Miller and the Liberals are trying to silence the legitimate concerns of First Nations about this proposed legislation by taking the unprecedented and undemocratic step of trying to force it to the House and the Senate without debate.
MNO President Margaret Froh says she is saddened by what she is calling continued Métis denialism. She says the legislation should be viewed as a positive for all Indigenous peoples.
This is not a zero-sum game. You know, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples talks about respecting the rights of all Indigenous peoples. Section 35 recognizes and affirms the Aboriginal and treaty rights of Aboriginal peoples of Canada, and that includes Métis, First Nations, and Inuit. There is no hierarchy.
Miller agrees and says there will be plenty of time to debate and analyze the bill as it now enters the committee stage after completing second reading on Wednesday.
You know, First Nations have been an ally to Métis and vice versa. They have both been subject to the oppression of Canada. And this should not be another process in Canada creating the rife conditions for lateral violence. So, you know, if there's anyone to blame here, it should be Canada. And, you know, First Nations should not be in a position to have to blame Métis, and Métis should not have to be in a position to blame First Nations.
Debate on Bill C-53 will continue when the House of Commons resumes in the fall. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
A group of Algonquin First Nations is speaking out against a proposed nuclear waste disposal site northwest of Ottawa. They say the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission is moving ahead without proper consultation and that it will be located too close to the Ottawa River. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Kitigan-Zibi Chief Dylan Whiteduck says people in the Ottawa area need to wake up to what Chalk River Laboratories wants to do.
Canadians and the citizens of Ottawa should be scared of this. I'm very shocked that the citizens of Ottawa are not aware of this. I speak to many citizens of Ottawa, and they never heard of a nuclear waste disposal 2 hours away from their home here.
Whiteduck was speaking at a press conference in Ottawa Tuesday morning, along with representatives from the Algonquin Nishnabeg Nation Tribal Council, Algonquin Nation Secretariat, and Quebecois First Nation. Last year, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, or CNSC, paused its hearings in order to give First Nations more time to weigh in on the project. But Quebecois First Nation Chief Lance Haymond says the extra 8 months was not enough time.
Our findings were realizing that there are huge gaps, and based on that reality, there's not an adequate time for us to have been consulted. Therefore, it's hard for us to make an informed decision and, provide consent.
The proposed site would handle 1 million cubic meters of low-level radioactive waste and be near the Ottawa River, where millions get their drinking water from. However, the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan are not against the proposed waste disposal site. Earlier this month, that First Nation signed a long-term relationship agreement with Canadian Nuclear Laboratories and Atomic Energy Canada. Haymond says they are disappointed.
We're troubled by, that decision. We're on the ground, we're seeing the impacts on the fauna, on the wildlife, on the area, and they have people who are supposed to be in there, and they have to be observing the same issues as we do.
APTN News reached out to Pikwakanagan for comment, but did not hear back by airtime. Meanwhile, the Algonquin First Nations say they intend to make their case again at the next CNSC hearing in August. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
All right, we have to step aside for a moment. We still have plenty more news to come when we return. Welcome back to APTN National News Weekend. The Algonquins of Barrier Lake came back from a week-long evacuation on Sunday after wildfires encroached on their territory from all directions. The community is reeling, but is now preparing for fires to come. Amelia Fournier has more.
I went to go see my dog, pet him before I left.
Sawyer Keys, age 12, was overjoyed to be reunited with his dog after being away from him for a week.
My eyes was like getting watery, I was like coughing.
That's because he was one of the first Algonquins of Barrier Lake to be evacuated on June 4th due to toxic air quality brought on by wildfires.
I noticed some kids wasn't out sometimes because I usually see some kids when around here.
He got on the first bus out to Gatineau, about 270 kilometers south of Rapid Lake, where his community lives.
Me and my mom and my sister had to get on that bus because we had bad lungs. Because some people were getting sick, plus my auntie was getting sick too. So we had to leave immediately.
He said his family packed up quick to get out of there, minus his dad and brother who stayed behind.
My mom told me to pack everything that I needed for the week. Because I didn't know we were staying there for a week, because I thought we were going to be staying there for 2 days.
Pets were evacuated separately from the thick smoke.
Sometimes you see a moose swimming across this way or swim across that way, depending which way they want to go.
But hunter Emmett Papatsi said area wildlife was not so lucky.
All the little animals swimming across finding safety for themselves too. I wish there was more of us that could help a lending hand to the animals also.
Air quality between 0 to 50 is supposed to be acceptable. We're at 18.
Chief Casey Ratt got an air quality monitor installed in Rapid Lake right before the evacuations.
It went to 511, I believe, the day I left, and it was between 511 and 600.
He said he'd never seen anything like this year's forest fires.
It was pretty frantic, to say, because everybody, everybody was so scared because we had fires going, up north, from all four sides. So they were very worried that the fires were going to come close. I mean, we never had fires come this close before.
Casey and about 20 community members stayed until June 9th to keep the community safe, despite the health risks caused by the smoke, combined with poorly ventilated houses.
The biggest worry for everybody, I think, was the air quality. So, I mean, it was just thick here, and it was hard to breathe. And considering the houses that are, not very well, I'll put it this way, they're not up to standard.
Land and Resource Manager Charles Ratt says they need to build a fire line, a cleared strip of land, to protect the community.
That was in talk prior to the fire taking place. We were in talks about that, how that's going to happen. And definitely we have to have more equipment and readiness when it comes to forest fires.
Charles Ratt says they're still assessing the full impact of the fires, and one camp in the bush was destroyed, but community members prevented the worst of the damage.
Our people were on the ground, trying to remove whatever they can from their camps, and get what the valuables they can, and some were trying to prepare, with fire hoses and get set up to defend their camps.
Ratt has managed to acquire new fire hoses and water pumps, and 31 Rapid Lake residents just completed their certification training to become auxiliary fire combatants.
Further down that way, towards Bronson Island, there the fires were close towards that way.
So hopefully, the Algonquins of Barrier Lake will be ready for the fires to come. Emilia Fournier, APTN National News, Rapid Lake, Quebec.
As Amelia just mentioned, following their close brush with Quebec forest fires earlier this month, just over 30 Algonquins from Barrier Lake decided to learn to fight fires themselves. Here's Amelia again.
Do you know how to properly get onto a moving helicopter? Pump water from a nearby water source. Coordinate multiple hoses to combat a fire.
Go, 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 move those legs, come on!
Have the strength to cut high-pressure water. That's what these auxiliary fire combatants in training are learning.
There's a lot of passion going on at the same time because people love the land, and these guys are used to the land, they're used to the bugs or anything, and so that's the concept here.
Warren Papati, an Algonquin of Barrier Lake, was in Gatineau as fires approached his community of Rapid Lake, Quebec, 270 kilometers north of Ottawa.
I felt kind of emotional because everyone else was being emotional, and they talk about the animals, they talk about the land. A lot of people hunts in the land, so that's the emotion we carry from that. So it's the reason why we're here.
He and 31 other community members traveled to Mont-Tremblant to learn what it takes to fight back.
Never keep cutting for more than 30 seconds. The pump's going to stop working. It needs to be quick.
Teamwork and clear communication are just as important as water to extinguish the flames.
Smooth as fast. Fast as smooth.
Joshua Payet of the SUPFER, Quebec's provincial firefighting service, has been showing them how it's done.
When you're in a very stressful situation, a lot of times things that are supposed to work very simply will not work just because you're stressing, your hands are shaking, things are going on around you, and what I'm trying to get them to understand is that just focus on what you're doing, forget everything around, and if things are going too fast, slow down. Smooth is fast, fast is smooth.
He said their teamwork has been amazing.
They're very eager, they're very proud to be here, they really want to learn. They feel privileged to be here, and they want to prove to their communities that they could fight these fires. So it's really fun to see.
Steve Wawadi, a member of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake Band Council, did the training 2 years ago and is getting recertified.
It's a good opportunity for these young guys. That's who I was thinking about, giving them that chance to to get out of the community and go places and meet people, and get some work experience.
He reached out to the SUPFR to see if they could train Rapid Lake residents who wanted to help fight fires. The SUPFR told him training would start mid-June.
At the same time, all this was happening, people were evacuating the community, and then we had some community members stayed back to try to save the community somehow. They try to cut an open area so that the fire doesn't jump to the community, I guess.
The trainees also included one woman.
Take it off. Go put her on over there.
It's been funny. All these dudes act like there's no girl around. I don't know. I mean, I've known all these guys my whole life, so it's kind of just hanging out with friends and family. But I know I have support when I need it too.
Vicky Jerome evacuated with her 2 sons when the fires approached.
Not gonna lie, it was pretty scary. I wanted to help, but I just didn't have the knowledge to, so it motivated me a lot to come out here and, take the initiative.
She said she's been gaining the knowledge to help fight fires the next time they come into the territory.
I wanted to be a part of the firefighting and, protecting our family land, our cabins. There's so much history out on the territory, and I have kids, and I wanted to be safe for them.
Jerome said she felt reassured by the SUPFR's safety protocols.
It doesn't seem as scary as I thought it was when I first got here. When we're on the ground, there's somebody looking after us, and there's someone looking after them and us, so there's levels of it all.
After their training week, they are now ready to take off. Emilia Fournier, APTN National News, Mont-Tremblant, Quebec.
We have to step aside one final time here on the show. A great story about the authenticity of a Norvell Morrison work is next. Welcome back to APTN National News Weekend. Mi'kmaq communities in Nova Scotia are celebrating the upcoming North American Indigenous Games, and a canoe relay is making stops in Mi'kmaq nations. Our Angel Moore recently caught up with the Nag Canoe.
Willow Peters was one of the Mi'kmaq athletes carrying this traditional Mi'kmaq birch bark canoe front and center.
I think it's pretty big. It's pretty cool. It wasn't that heavy.
They're members of the Buckingeg Nation participating in the upcoming North American Indigenous Games and this Nag Canoe Relay, which stopped at the Buckingeg Nation. 9 athletes represent the community. Peters is 13 years old and will be competing in Nag for the first time.
I've only just started doing track this year, and I've gotten pretty good at it, and I'm really excited to compete against other people and meet new people.
The relay is traveling to Mi'kmaq nations throughout Nova Scotia before the games begin in July at the Millbrook Nation and Jabuktuk, where over 5,000 athletes will compete. It's the first time the event is being held in Mi'kma'ki.
I was part of the bid, so it was really exciting to be part of that and get the announcement that we were doing it. So it's just been an amazing journey. I gotta be honest, I wasn't sure, but it was really great when we actually had that official announcement to be able to have it here.
The traditional birch bark canoe represents the Mi'kmaq who traveled great distances on the waterways. Today, the canoe relay connects Mi'kmaq communities and showcases the athletes. Corey Julian, chief of Buckingeg Nation, says sports is good for the youth.
It plays a big part in our kids' well-being and growing up, and makes them successful in life. That and sports does that for every kid. So I think every child in the community should have the opportunity to play recreation. So that's something I'd like to see more of.
About 60 community members attended the event. Nag Swag was a hit as lunch sizzled on the barbecue and little ones enjoyed the day. Julian is looking forward to welcoming other nations.
It was really putting our territory on the map. A lot of people don't know we're down here in the East Coast, and they forget, you know, there's Mi'kmaq settlement here.
The canoe relay continues to 2 more Mi'kmaq nations and will end up in Jabuktuk, known as Halifax, on July 7th. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Buckingeg Nation.
Is it the real deal? That's what Seneca College in Toronto is asking itself about one of their paintings done by a renowned artist, Norvell Morrison. Lately, many works supposedly painted by him have turned out to be forgeries. Last week, Seneca College hosted an art expert to tell them if their Morrison was indeed the genuine article. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
So is this Norvell Morrison painting fake or real? Seneca College brought in Jonathan Summer of Morrison Art Consulting to tell them.
We applied the whole wide range of analysis methods to this. We looked at materials, we looked at Morrellian analysis, historical analysis, trying to put it into context. We looked at the provenance, and unfortunately we came to the conclusion that it's a fake. Just kidding.
Joking aside, forgeries of the works of major artists like Morrison is a lucrative business. Summer says there are likely more than 6,500 fakes of the artist's work alone out on the market, and it's easy to see why.
Morrison is an iconic, he's the grandfather of the Woodland School of Art. He's probably the most important Indigenous artist that we've ever had in Canada. And so his art is greatly sought after.
When it comes to the forgeries of Morrison's work, Summer says not only is it illegal, but also a form of cultural appropriation.
Because what is this if not the robbing of, it's a form of colonization when people come along, and I can say that a lot of the people who are allegedly involved in this are white people who've come along and who are taking liberties with and stealing the message, the soul of this great Indigenous artist.
Rima Taveras is the manager of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at Seneca College. She says the college is proud of its Indigenous art collection, and it is a major relief the piece Summer examined is indeed real.
Yeah, we're absolutely delighted to find out that it's an authentic Norvell Morrison piece. You know, we purchased it a long time ago, and it's been a part of our collection for a very long time, and so it's nice to have that knowledge that it is authentic and that we are, you know, holding a piece of amazing Norvell Morrison history here.
It's one that's been in their collection for 50 years. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Toronto.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, that's all we have for you tonight on APTN National News Weekend. If you missed anything from this past week, our website, aptnnews.ca, will have those stories for you that you missed. For all of us here, thank you so much for joining us. Miigwech, Kinanaskimitin, and have a great rest of your weekend.